Let's go into National 2 and let's talk through National 2 East to begin with, where 4 of the top 5 sides were in action last weekend. And just for the second time in 2025, we saw league leaders Tunbridge Julians take to the field and they battled to a hard-fought 24-17 Derby Day victory away at 11th placed Sevenoaks. Now, Sevenoaks were actually 17-12 ahead just before the hour, thanks to Ben Adams' intercept try. But TJs then took advantage of a Sevenoaks sin binning with Connor Lloyd and Duncan Tout sealing a 15th win of the campaign for the table toppers. Third place Dorking also took a seat in the winners' lounge last weekend, but this was a good response from Armand Roux side against Guernsey Raiders as they secured a 40-20 win at the big field. Now, Dorking were beaten at home by Henley in round 17, but 4 second half tries saw them return to winning ways at the first time of asking. And Raiders did have Brad Webb sent off just after the hour when they were trailing 27-15, but Dorking were able to pull away in the final quarter. So the impact those results have on the top half of the table sees TJ's move 6 points clear of second place Barnes with a game in hand, while Dorking are just 1 point behind their old foes, also with a game to spare. But look at Canterbury in fourth. They are a team on the march at the minute as they made it 6 wins in a row last week with a hard-fought 29-25 triumph over Worthing. Tom Williams there with another brilliant try for the City men, and it is a result that leaves them 9 points off the top, having played a game more than Tunbridge Julians. But briefly, just having a quick look at the bottom half of the table now, in terms of that result for Worthing, their spirited display earned them 2 points to leave them 9 points from safety, while Sevenoaks also added to their tally last time out. And the only game we haven't mentioned was Westcombe Park's trip to Henley Hawks, where the 5th place visitors edged it 12-8 to make it 6 straight wins. And conveniently, they are our first feature club of the week on the National League Rugby preview show. Now, Westcombe Park hosts Kent's counterparts Canterbury this week, so it is 5th versus 4th, and both teams, as we just mentioned, are on 6-game winning runs, so it should be a decent contest at Goddington Dean on Saturday. Now, this is Westcombe Park's second successive season in National 2 East, and they were actually a level 4 club back in 2012, but after promotion back to National 2 in 2023, they have really not looked back. They've really looked to solidify their place in this division since then. They finished 9th last year on 69 points. They currently find themselves in 5th place on 55 points for this campaign. And as we say, they have a Kent derby to look forward to against Canterbury on Saturday. And there's various different overlaps between the two sides to add another few subplots to Saturday's encounter. So ahead of the meeting in round 18, we caught up with Westcombe Park Director of Rugby David Marshall and Chairman John Vallely. David, if we can start with you to begin with, obviously looking ahead to the big game against Canterbury this weekend, both sides in excellent form at the moment. But from a Westcombe Park perspective, David, you must be really pleased with the way things have gone for the club, certainly either side of the Christmas period.
Yeah, I think we're in good form at the moment. Obviously, 6 wins on the bounce. I think we're sitting 5th in the table. I think if you'd have offered us that going into February, at the start of the season, would have sort of snapped your hand off. I think building off the back of what was a good second half of the season for us last year, I think was important. Yeah, we started well. I mean, I think we won 4 of our first 5 games, and then we had a bit of a blip. Coincided with some sort of struggles with injuries and bits and pieces, like all clubs do. But yeah, off the back of what was a pretty abject performance against Sevenoaks at home, we had a few honest conversations and sort of regroup really, and to see the lads bounce back as they have done, it's been sort of really impressive, and really pleased. Now we're learning all the time as well. This is only our second year at this level, back at this level. I know the club's got a good history of the national leagues from sort of times gone by, but we haven't been here for a long time. So this particular group has had to come up and sort of adjust. And like I said at the start, we've had a good second half of the year last year. Sort of ended up finishing sort of ninth with some really strong results sort of after Christmas, and we've sort of backed that up now. And we feel we're at the level and the standard where we sort of belong. But yeah, we're learning all the time. Last year as well, going back, I think we only won 2 games away from home last year as well, at North Walsham and at Sevenoaks. So, this year we've picked up sort of 4 or 5 wins away from home. So been able to go away from home and pick up points, as well as having strong home form. Has sort of been really pleasing for us as well, and that sort of helped us sort of get to where we are at the moment.
Yeah, and John, just to pick up on a couple of points David mentions there, you referenced kind of the end of last season, a really strong end for Westcombe Park. But when you guys sit down in the summer, what is it that you're trying to look to build on? Is it those plus points from the season before? Because looking at the league table now, I think you've already achieved more wins than you did last season. So what were you looking to build on from last season, John?
I think, Chris, what we were discussing over those months was to feel more secure at this level. We knew that coming back up, as David has just described, would be a challenge after being away from the national leagues for a few seasons. So we really looked to survive, I guess, is the first thing. And then this season, what we wanted to do, and in very broad terms, the target was to feel safe before the Christmas period. And I think David and the team, the coaches and the players, stepped up to that challenge with those 3 or 4 results in the run up to Christmas. And I think in general, where we were confident was that with the experience of last season, the committee and the stalwarts round about the club felt that games that we maybe lost last year, we would possibly win this year, and that's proved to be the case.
Yeah, and going back to what you were talking about before, John, and David's referenced the term learnings quite a lot in the first part of this interview. How important is that for a community club to continuously try to learn in what is obviously such a challenging environment for all these National League clubs who want to be sustainable but want to also enjoy the rugby as well? How important is it to take that kind of measured outlook when you are planning for a new season or planning during the season?
It's interesting you mentioned that learning experience, and I think as chairman of the club, one of the things that I'm really pleased with and enthused about is the way that the senior officials of other clubs are happy to share information about how they meet the challenges, whether it's introducing women's rugby, it's whether driving revenues, about getting more people in through the gate, about communicating with the club. And when we have the pre-match lunches, all the officials are very happy to say, well, we've tried this and this has worked. So that there's the rugby community, which seems to work very well. And as well, the other side of that coin is us working hard to make ourselves a community club. So the National League position is great. And the way that the club sees that is that that's the flagship that attracts people to come up to watch the game, but probably more importantly, to get those kids that are joining us when they're 6, 7 years old, but also with our academy team that is now up and running after having been in abeyance for a few years. But now the guys that run that are saying that National League Rugby is one of the chief selling points to get those guys coming from local schools and want to have a pathway where they could possibly play rugby at that level. The community piece, and I think it's a challenge for a lot of clubs, is trying to attract players to the club, trying to retain players. And one of the challenges, and I did mention, I think I mentioned it to you when we chatted, Chris, at the RFU Roadshow, which was up at Dartford Valley, one of the points that I made is that we need, as a group, as a rugby group, to work out how we get those guys that go away to university to come back to their home clubs. Because that is such a pool of players that I think that we miss out on an awful lot. They might not play national rugby, but they might play a good standard of county rugby with our Taggers team. And then more importantly, they would join our social rugby side, which, is a lot of good fun. And you see it's a different kind of a feeling. And that's something that we're trying to promote more and more. Challenge, but it's something that we're trying to do.
Yeah, and it seems like that kind of segues John, into kind of the push that you guys are doing towards the end of this season. I know, again, referencing our chat yesterday, but you mentioned kind of the community day towards the end of the season, and I've seen loads of different bits and pieces on the club website, as well as about kind of getting people down to the club in any capacity, whether it's watching the first 15, lending a helping hand, just being involved with Westcombe Park, and it's something that you don't want to rest on. It's something you quite clearly, listening to you there, want to keep on pushing with.
Yeah, Saturday, the 5th of April is our last home game. It's a very early last home game. So we've identified that as one to advertise round the town, round Orpington. Not particularly well known as a rugby town. It's not like Bath or Sevenoaks or even Canterbury, say. So we're going to go around some of the traditional areas, like pubs, greasy spoon calves, betting shops, to push out our poster and the club magazine. But obviously, we'll be looking at schools as well, trying to advertise that to get kids to come up with their mums and dads and carers. It's to get more people there at the last game of the season, to give the club a bit of a buzz before we break until we rejoin at home back over in September. Also to show people that it's good fun in a rugby club. It's got a real community spirit. We always talk about that in the game, but maybe it's easy sometimes to point fingers at the RFU, but I don't believe that helps. I think what clubs have got to do is to look to themselves, look to the future, and get themselves known and promoted, and have people talking about it. I mean, I would love, having been at Bath on a match day, the town's buzzing, and you see people with Bath kit on, and I just love that to be Orpington High Street. Don't think we'll ever get to that level, but a bit of a buzz about the place.
Yeah, I think we second that here on the National League Rugby preview show, John. We're always looking to grow the game as much as possible. And just kind of sticking on the Kent rugby theme, we touched on it there a little bit. Obviously, Canterbury to come this weekend at your place, but the overlaps between the two teams, after speaking to both Taff and Matt at the start of the season, there seems to be a lot of friendships, a lot of relationships across both clubs. I know, obviously, you were a coach at Canterbury as well a few years ago, David, when the side were promoted to National One, and I know you know Taff and Matt really well, and players have played for both teams. So does that kind of add a little bit to an occasion where you are building up to this weekend, where you've got two sides that know each other quite well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good game. I mean, going back to the days when I played for Westcombe Park, we had big games against Canterbury when they got promoted into national leagues originally. So yeah, it's sort of run a few years now. So there's a bit of backstory into it. It sort of whets the appetite a little bit, I suppose. It doesn't really sort of change too much. For ultimately, you don't get any more points for beating Canterbury than you do for beating anyone else. So, the challenge is to make sure we put in a performance on Saturday and ultimately give ourselves the best chance to win the game. We want to stay competitive in that top end of the table. That's ultimately where we're looking to go. We've improved a lot since that Canterbury game early part of the season. We've got some boys back fit and healthy now, and we're performing pretty well. Pack in particular, sort of stamping authority on the game. So we've got ideas for how we can be more competitive for the weekend, and of course, we want to win the game. I'm sure they're saying exactly the same thing in their changing room at the moment, or in the moment. So hopefully it'll be competitive, but hopefully we can get the win. That's what we're looking for. In terms of them as a club, obviously it's great to see them doing so well off the back of sort of coming down from that one. I know Matt and Vallely and Taff really well, and quite a lot of the players. So yeah, it's great to see them as a Kent club doing really well this season, and sort of like flag bearing for Kent Rugby in East Kent as well. I live down the road from Merton Lane, so it's it's good that my local rugby club, I suppose, is doing really well. And like you said, we got a lot of crossover here. I mean, Andy Pratt's one of the coaches at Westcombe Park here now, who was the director of rugby at Canterbury when they went up to National One, and we've got Matt Pinnock, who was the forwards coach. He's now coaching us. So yeah, there is a lot of overlap. We've got a few ex-Canterbury players, and they've got a few ex-Westcombe Park players. So it should make for a good afternoon.
So a big thanks to David and John for their time this week, building up to the latest instalment of Westcombe Park versus Canterbury. Both sides do have some pretty big games on the horizon over the next month or so, but it all starts with this Saturday's clash at Goddington Dean. It was also great to hear John talking about how much of a community club Westcombe Park continues to be. 121 years of history at the club, but they are still constantly finding ways and looking at ways to engage people with Westcombe Park, and they are on the lookout for volunteers at the moment. So if you are able to lend a helping hand or want to get involved with the club in one way or another, I'm sure Westcombe Park and John and everyone involved with the club will be grateful for any support you can show. And as John mentioned, Westcombe Park do have their community day towards the end of this season when they host Old Albanian in their final home game of the campaign on April 5th. So make sure you do look out for that as well. But Westcombe Park versus Canterbury this weekend is just one of 7 games to look forward to in National 2 East, including second place Barnes up against Guernsey Raiders. Jack Heald's side resume their campaign on the back of 3 straight wins and may want to exact a bit of revenge on Guernsey, who snatched a dramatic 35-31 victory in the reverse fixture back in October in one of the games of the season so far. So more of the same this weekend, please. 8th place, Bury St Edmunds take on Sevenoaks. Jacob Ford will be hoping the plus points he was able to see from Bury's most recent 55-34 derby win at Colchester can carry over into this one against an improving Sevenoaks. Henry Hawks welcomed Colchester to dry lees. Hawks boss Luke Allen was visibly deflated after last week's narrow loss to Westcombe Park, so he will want a reaction from his team against Colchester, who are still more than up for the fight in this relegation scrap in National 2 East. Speaking of still fighting, bottom club Worthing go to 9th placed Old Albanian. The Raiders, as we mentioned before, banked 2 bonus points last week, but can they build on that against an away side targeting a 3rd straight home win? Elsewhere, Oxford Harlequins, who sit 9 points clear of the bottom 2, take on Dorking, while 10th placed Havant travel to league leaders Tunbridge Judians, and Havant will be eager for a response after shipping 61 points in their last outing against informed Canterbury at Hawks Lane. And as we've already mentioned, it is Derby Day at Goddington Dean with Westcombe Park facing Canterbury.